Hi everyone, this is Jason and welcome back to the channel. My guest today is Naomi Brockwell. We're going to be discussing Bitcoin, cashless society, and government control. But before we begin,
All right.
please subscribe.
Hi, everyone. This is Jason. Welcome back to the channel. It's my great honor and privilege to be joined today by Naomi Brockwell. Naomi Brockwell has been a staunch advocate for Bitcoin for a number of years. You all know her. I favorite and follow her every Friday. And so
And
by
I
now,
appreciate that.
right.
I love watching your content. I've always said for a long time now, since we connected on the internet, you create some of the best memes out there.
Well, it's funny because most of those come pre-programmed into the app, but I've always found that sometimes memes give a better reaction than I ever could.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
no, it's amazing how art can do that. They elicit this response that, you could try and verbalize something and get a response, but you put out a meme, suddenly it like connects with people a little bit better. It's yeah,
exactly,
art has a way of doing that.
exactly. So briefly, for people who don't know, Naomi and I actually met through Twitter. We met actually through Jennifer Grossman of the Atlas Society. At the time, I was reading Atlas Shrugged, and I had also begun to hear about Bitcoin. So I asked in a tweet to Jennifer, what would Ayn Rand think of Bitcoin? And she said that she didn't know, but let's ask Naomi Brockwell and Jeffrey Tucker. And she tagged them into the retweet. And that was it, right? That was
And history was made, and
history was made.
Jason and Naomi became best friends ever since on the
That's right.
interwebs. And we even got to meet in person recently at
We
Bitcoin
did.
2019, which was
Yeah,
pretty
we
fun.
did. And that event was, it was life changing for me because, it's easy to lose yourself in the internet of things.
Right.
Like we're on camera right now, but it's different when you're in the same room with the people that the energy is different, you know
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
and
that was a great event. Great meeting people live.
yeah, and as MC you did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good job. So continuing with Naomi's introduction, because we're friends and we get lost in conversation. She's also an MC. She's a producer. She is you have to subscribe to Naomi's channel because there is so much great content over there. It's educational, it's entertaining, it's funny. uh I can't say enough about this woman. You guys need to subscribe to her and support her work.
I will send you your check in mail for all that amazing PR work there.
I
I'm
accept
glad that
Bitcoin.
yeah, good. I'm glad that people like the content. I've been doing it for a long time now, and I think it's important to educate people about what's going on in this realm of money that's outside of the government's jurisdiction. This was this strange thought for a really long time. We lost sight of the fact that historically money was not created by the government. They came into play a lot later, and they kind of co-opted the system and set up a really bad deal for people. Not only does the US dollar exist in the state of it, like not only can it be debased, whereas Bitcoin cannot be debased, the US dollar exists in the state of perpetual institutionalized debasement. That is not a good situation for the people who are forced to use USD. So it was just really important for me to educate people about this world where the government couldn't control the money supply, and you could be your own bank, and you could take back, reclaim that financial sovereignty. And I just think it's really important that people get educated about this.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. Because you've been doing this for a while. I think the earliest video I saw on your channel was from around 2013.
Yeah,
So
I started making video content about Bitcoin around 2013, and I make pieces for Reason and Liberty.me and IHS, so like all of these different institutions, and some of my own stuff. And I started recording interviews. I recently have been going through my archives because I have like 30 terabytes of video footage from years and years and years and years of making videos. And I started going back through them to find my earliest content where I started talking about this, and it's fascinating, you know, like talking to Vitalik before Ethereum was launched, like a year before Ethereum was launched, or, you know, for the first time I met Charlie Lee at the Bitcoin Center in like 2013. So it's been this interesting journey, and the space has evolved a huge amount over the many years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And well, that's actually it's an interesting point, because I think right now we're at a crossroads as to what crypto is trying to be. Not crypto itself, but the people who are in it. There's a lot of people who look at it as solely as an investment. They don't look at it as the financial sovereignty, the financial freedom that a lot of older people who have been in the space for a while do. So do you think that that's going to be a problem moving forward, that you have two distinct views of cryptocurrency?
Definitely not. I mean, there are places for anyone in crypto, and there are some great positive externalities of, you know, people coming into the space for various reasons. They're benefiting from a lot of things that they probably don't even realize are important. So I think that the reason why Bitcoin has been increasing in value, I mean, a lot of it is speculative. People think it's going to the moon and all of this. But you have to ask yourself why. Why do they think that this magical internet money is going to the moon? Because, you know, people aren't buying into certain, you know, game tokens the same way. You know, people aren't buying into Starbucks digital rewards tokens the same way. Like, why Bitcoin? You know, so you start looking at the properties. It was designed. Well, first of all, it was this unique digital asset. It was the first time that we had digital assets that couldn't be copied at will. You know, you can take a screenshot of a picture and distribute it to a million different people. You can copy an MP3 and send that to as many people as you want. But Bitcoin, Satoshi figured out how to make a digital asset that couldn't be reproduced. So there's value in that. There's value in the scarcity. Now, if you apply that principle of scarcity to monetary policy, I mean, you start to dig deep into Austrian economics roots of understanding, like, what is money? Why is it bad that we have all of this constant inflation from government? And I mean, like, the traditional, like Riesman's definition of inflation meaning expansion of the money supply. The fact that the Fed does all this quantitative easing, the fact that they had trillions of dollars of TARP bailouts, they just created this money and put it into the marketplace. The fact that we have about, you know, targeted 2% inflation a year. That means that every year your money is losing 2% of its value. That means that since, you know, 1913, we have lost 98% of the value of the US dollar. So that is not a good thing. You know, we talk about, like, oh, you know, scarce digital goods. Oh, this is really cool. This is really interesting. But the fact that we have a predetermined inflation schedule in Bitcoin is super important. And I love it that people are getting into Bitcoin for whatever reasons, because they're supporting a system that is supporting people's financial sovereignty. They're supporting a system, and they may not be supporting it for the same reasons as you, but them getting involved in all of this makes the system stronger, and it does give people back financial autonomy. They can control their own money. They can be their own bank. They can safeguard their wealth. There's no chance that this money is going to, you know, there's ever going to be any more than 21 million Bitcoins. It just won't happen. If they somehow change the code or whatever, that won't be Bitcoin anymore. That will be a fork. And we can choose whether or not we're going to support this one that has 55 trillion Bitcoin, or we're going to support the scarce one. I can bet you that the scarce one is going to be more valuable. So it's just this really interesting situation where, as you said, different people have gotten involved in the ecosystem. That's really exciting. And I think that one thing we have to learn when we're marketing cryptocurrency to people and explain to people, like, you should get involved, you need to look at their value system. Don't necessarily jam your values down their throat and say, well, this is why it's important and you need to love it for these reasons. No, figure out what they want from it. Figure out what value it can provide for them, what they prioritize in their lives, and sell them on those points. That's the only way that we're actually going to expand this. You know, education comes afterwards, and you can maybe bring them on side and help them to understand why this financial sovereignty is important. But, you know, if that's not a priority of theirs, you probably can't force that right off the bat, and it's better to look at ways that crypto can service their needs.
Well, that's true, and it's similar to the traditional stock market. Everyone people get into that for different reasons too. Like you have your more high risk investors, you have your value investors, but they're all investors. So at the end of the day, all that matters is people is transacting in the market that is out there. So no, that's very true. That's a great point. Thank you so much for that. There's certain misconceptions about Bitcoin, specifically. What have you heard people say that is not true about Bitcoin, but you hear it a lot, kind of like a urban legend? But like, have you ever come across something that you were just like, okay, that's not true, and you should probably stop saying it?
I mean, all the time. I go on national television quite often, and right up starting in 2013, I would be debating people about this, and I've debated government officials about this, and like I remember one person who was saying how this, you know, the typical narrative back then was all about the drug dealers and the black markets and how it's terrible, and I was actually talking about what was going on in Venezuela, and still continues to this day. You know, it's only gotten worse. But you know, sort of educating people about how, you know, this existed outside of just the Silk Road. This isn't just for drug dealers, but what that model proved is that this is a money outside of government control. You know, they could shut down a website, they can throw a CEO or a creator in jail, they can target individuals, they can unplug a server, they could do all of these things. Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. Bitcoin doesn't have a single server they can unplug. Bitcoin doesn't have a headquarters they can storm. So it just kind of showed the resilience of this network that, you know, the government can say they ban it on a piece of paper, but governments enforcing any bans throughout history has been, you know, feeble at best. You know, Prohibition era did not achieve much apart from driving, drinking underground. So prohibition of anything doesn't generally work, and government is tremendously inefficient when it comes to censoring these things. What's more is that this is a digital commodity that transcends arbitrary national boundaries. This can be said overseas instantaneously. It is a global phenomenon. It doesn't exist just in one single country, you know, so it's going to continue to exist even if one government decides to ban it. It's going to continue to exist even if all governments ban it. In fact, if that awful scenario happened, it would go on to prove how much we really need money that is outside of the government's control. Because I imagine that if all governments suddenly join forces and like, we're going to outlaw this thing we can't control, oh my gosh, that's some crazy Orwellian nightmare right there. So you're going to want something that's outside of their control, because what kind of choices are they going to start to curb or make for you next?
Bad choices.
Bad choices.
So, well, okay. So along that lines, in a few of your most recent videos, you talked about Australia banning cash.
Ugh.
Okay.
Ugh.
So
Yeah.
now here's the thing about that, and a question that I had was how much, because first off, you're banning your own currency. So what is it that they're trying to do? Are they trying to make it so that every transaction is tracked?
Absolutely. It's a power play. So the rhetoric these governments use, and cash ban isn't unique to Australia, it's happening all over the world. You can bet that it's going to come to America soon, you know. Governments want to digitize more and more of our lives, and that is because it can be easily surveilled, I should say. It can be easily tracked, it can be easily monitored, it can be easily seized and controlled. And so they're basically necessitating that we use middlemen like banks. They're saying, listen, if you have a purchase that is over $5,000, $10,000 AUD, which is like $6,000 American, which is that's small amount. Like, you know, there are a lot of transactions I could think of where you might want to choose for whatever reason to pay in cash. They're saying that you have to go through a bank. So let's say you don't want to use a bank account. Let's say you object to their questionable standards. Let's say you don't like fractional reserve banking and you think that, you know, you can't trust them to have your money there if you go to get it. Let's say you don't like their exorbitant fees. Let's say you don't like the bad practices of charging people for services that they have no intention of providing, or charging people fees when they've been deceased for 10 years. These are all horrible things that banks have done, you know, dubious policies where you have giant bailouts to the tune of trillions of dollars that are completely opaque. You know, US government, we have no idea where the TARP bailouts went. There's no audit of this. We don't know where that money went. And that's for good reason. They deliberately did this. They forced all these banks, even banks that were in the black, to accept money so that there wouldn't be bank runs. Like, there are a tremendous amount of reasons why you would choose not to use banks.
Right.
Well, now the government is literally saying in Australia, you must use these institutions. There is no possible way for you to now make purchases without these institutions. So it doesn't matter what bad practices they are. You can't vote with your feet. You can't vote with your money and say, listen, I'm choosing not to give this bad business my money. They're forcing you to do this. They're propping up this this cartel. And I think that, one, that's disgusting just from a position of your freedom of choice. You should be able to, you know, use whatever businesses you choose to use. You know, if you disagree with a business, you don't have to go to that business. That should be the way that it operates. And in every other part of our lives it does, but in this part apparently it doesn't. So I think that that's bad, but then you start looking at exactly what you mentioned, and that is the monitoring, the surveillance. They're talking about how they just want to go after the money launderers and the drug dealers and all of that. It's about control. If they, you know, it's all about control. First of all, you know, they're thinking of banning like $100 notes as well, whereas most of the drug trafficking apparently in Australia, like, it's all $50 notes. So it's, I mean, it's just these strange things going on. But we are moving towards this digital society, this cashless society, and that is scary, because that is a society where the governments can freeze your assets at will. If they're in a bank account, they can seize them. You could be Cyprus, you could wake up and a huge percentage of your bank account has just disappeared because the government decided to take it. That was devastating when that happened in Cyprus. And I think that was a huge wake-up call for lots of people. And I know a lot of people said, yeah, that was the moment that I put everything into Bitcoin, because I knew that this was the future. Same thing happened in Poland. People wake up, all their savings are gone. Venezuela, it's slightly different, but still tragic. You know, people wake up and every day their money has lost more and more value. Doesn't matter how much they had in the bank. You know, it's a wheelbarrow to go down and buy a loaf of bread. It could be many wheelbarrows these days. So I mean, it's just this terrible situation. Cash bans are not good. And when we talk about, you know, digital money and everything becoming digital and how that's bad, remember that not all digital money is created equal. So digital is bad when it's passed through a middleman, when it is controlled by the government, when it's seizable by a government. Digital is great when you have privacy of your transactions, when you have control of your transactions. So now that we have choice in society, I think that we have a lot more freedom than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Libra.
Well, that being said, I mean, so everyone hates on Libra. I hate Facebook. I don't think Libra is going to be a good project, but what Libra has done is gotten people talking about the right to financial privacy. No one was talking about that. We quite happily use our credit cards at every purchase we make because we get points and we get little bonuses and perks that go along with that. If we purchase on our credit card, we might get insurance for that trip or whatever. So, you know, people very happily give all that data to the banks and they use that data. You can bet that they're selling that data. I mean, that's probably part of their business model. All of that data is out there and somebody is leveraging that. So no one was talking about financial privacy and why we should be using cash. And now everyone is saying, but Facebook isn't good with our privacy. We have the right to financial privacy. What will they do with this data? Now you have politicians literally in the Senate saying, listen, how can blockchain help preserve people's financial data? Is this something that could help them? I mean, I never even dreamed we'd be having that conversation with politicians, you know, in Washington, but that is what's happening right now. So the fact that Libra kickstarted that conversation and got people thinking differently about money and got people away from the idea that only governments should have the power to create money, I think that is wonderful.
Do you think the exchanges are the reason why we have so much confusion in the taxing of cryptocurrency? Because at any second, I can change Bitcoin to Litecoin to Ethereum to Tron, whatever. And every time you do that, it's supposed to be a taxable event.
So I think that there's some confusion there. No, in essence, no, I don't. think that exchanges are bad. And exchanging your money from Bitcoin to Ethereum, in my view, is no different from exchanging your money Bitcoin to US dollar. You're changing between currencies. They're distinct currencies, and need to be treated as such. At the moment, they're being treated as assets. So the government's idea of what these digital things are needs to change. I think it's crazy that we started off with this idea of digital cash, Bitcoin, peer-to-peer, cash system. It kind of it got morphed, and now it's this digital asset system that the IRS charges you every time you make an exchange because of capital gains. That doesn't encourage people to use this as a money. So that's a huge issue for me. Also, taxation in general is a huge issue for me, but maybe we'll save that for another video. But exchanges are not problem here. In fact, exchanges are a vital part of the ecosystem. A lot of people hate on these traders and speculators, but they provide liquidity in the market. They provide easy in and out points for people. They provide a counterparty so that, if you want to exchange things, you have someone on the other end who's willing to exchange. The more people using exchanges, that's a good thing. People also blame, exchanges on volatility, but a lot of the time it's the people who are trading back and forth that are helping with that price determination. And actually, the more people in the system, arguably, you could say there's the more liquidity equals more stability there. And we've definitely been seeing that as Bitcoin grows. So, 10 years ago in Bitcoin, it was not uncommon to see like major giant swings in a day of 10% or whatever. And then, these days it's not uncommon to see like a swing of 1% in a day. It's very common, more than that even. 10 years time, it's going to get even smaller. We're starting to see things stabilize. There's more people in the market. There's more people on either side of those bets willing to hedge. And so you start to find this equilibrium there. That doesn't mean that we're not going to keep seeing, big movements either way, because this is a very young currency and we've still got a long way to go before we find that price determination. So I have no idea what's going to happen there, but exchanges are vital because you want to be able to move your money as you please in and out of whatever form is necessary and easiest for you. Now, I would say that we may start to see people move away from centralized exchanges and towards decentralized exchanges, but it's all a trade-off. So it depends what you want from the exchange. Right. If you're a high frequency trader, you're not going to want to ever use a decentralized exchange because there's too much friction there. It's too slow. It doesn't work. Right. If you're someone who once a year wants to move, your Litecoin into Bitcoin, then you probably could use a decentralized exchange, and you might want to do that if you believe that, maybe an exchange is going to go underwater. Maybe you believe that the government might crack down any day on cryptocurrency and start targeting exchanges because they're the ones who hold the bank accounts and have the central focal point, have the server that can be unplugged, etc. So it all depends what you want from the exchange, but I definitely don't look down on exchanges. I think that they're vital for sure.
Well, and you make a good point about the centralized exchanges versus the decentralized exchanges. I think my experience up until recently has been with centralized exchanges, the Coinbases, the Binances, things like that. Where they lost me was with the KYC. It's you're asking for all of this information and I don't know anything about you.
the asymmetry of information sharing.
Right. It's like, no, but and I think that's when my view of exchanges started to dim because of
Well, it should change your view of the government policy, because it really is such a contradiction of what they're asking. On the one hand, they're blaming Facebook and they're saying, you do not protect people's privacy, find a better way. And meanwhile, then they're saying to people, also exchanges, we're going to force you whether you want to or not. We're going to force you to collect all of this information. And yes, it's going to be your responsibility to keep that information safe, but we're going to force you to collect it. So what we end up is this giant store, like warehouses with a big target symbol on it, right, saying like, data, sensitive, please attack me. Identity theft is a $1 trillion industry, and it hurts a lot of people. And I think that the issue is not that, yes, these places need to have better security, but these places don't need to be collecting this information. This KYC is nonsense, in my opinion. I think that all this talk about like protecting us from money launderers, the amount of like the trillions and trillions of dollars every year that is spent on these policies, if we're going to be spending that money, there are a lot of things I could name that I would rather see that money go towards,
Right.
like let's end the war on drugs while we're at it. And then you wouldn't
Right.
have a lot of these, these people
Exactly.
that you need to catch in the first place. So all of that aside, we start to get quite political there. But I think that what's happening in essence is that politicians have come along and they have what they know. They have these systems in place that from their perspective are doing good work. They have these noble intentions as they say, well, we're trying to protect society. These are the ways that we think we can do it best. And obviously we have to judge policies not by their intentions, by their outcomes. So perhaps that is a mistake of the politicians there for just sticking to this noble idea. But we do have these systems in place that they say are, for their best interest. So along comes this new thing that breaks the mold. And they're trying to shoehorn it into this archaic system. They're trying to shoehorn it into this archaic, financial infrastructure, into these policies that just don't work, into these definitions of, is it an asset, is it a currency? And I mean, it's a new thing. It's brand new. Maybe it's not neither of these things. We're still trying to figure out what all of this means. So I think that it's they're trying to shoehorn things into these existing systems that doesn't work. And perhaps we need people who are thinking more outside of the box, or perhaps people who want society to just be free, and let's just see this thing develop and innovate and see what happens. I'm seeing a lot of really exciting changes take place that I'm so happy about. People getting more financial sovereignty, more financial privacy, more freedom to do things like, for example, I've got this right next to me.
Oh, you got it.
So you've got the government is suing the publisher because
I know.
so they're saying that Edward didn't pass the manuscript through them and get approval and all of this.
Let's see. Why not?
The same government that he's outing in the book. And so he actually posted the other day and said, in essence, this is good for Bitcoin. Why is this good for Bitcoin? Because the government is now threatening to seize all of the revenue from this book, which they totally can in fiat. They could just freeze the bank accounts. They could seize it. And so if you support someone like Edward Snowden, if you think that, yes, getting clarity about what's going on in government, like getting transparency about that is important, you probably want to support him. Now, if the only way you can support him is through these centralized means where the money can be stolen at whim and that doesn't actually get to him, that's bad. Bitcoin gives you back that power. It gives you the power to donate to WikiLeaks, which again, the government took away. So it's that power to make choices with the money you earn that I think we're starting to see back in the individual's hand. And that makes me tremendously excited.
Well, and I'm so glad you held that up. Everyone, I'm going to put a link in the description so you can get a copy.
Look at my poster. I'm such a fan girl. It's ridiculous.
Well, and it makes me think, because I was actually going to buy the book and I was going to buy it on I have a Kindle. So I was going to buy it on digital. But then I was thinking, I've seen instances where they've changed the book in the Kindle. So
I thought the exact same thing. I was like, oh, I'll get the Audible or I'll get the Kindle version, because then I could just have it, take it anywhere. And I never buy normal books anymore. Everything is digital in my life. But I thought, oh, if the government does succeed in banning this, that'll disappear.
Right.
So I got my paperback right here. The same reason that we need cash that can't be taken away. The same reason that we need digital assets that are controlled by the individual and not in some third party that you're trusting, which can be seized. So all comes back around.
Okay, you need to get out of my head, Naomi. All right, so everyone, once again, I want to thank Naomi for coming on the show today. Naomi, thank you so much for spending this time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
I'm going to link your website. You just updated the website. Is it still naomibrockwell.com?
It is, but I would rather people go to my YouTube channel. So that's where all the action happens there. They're on my Twitter page. That's where I post all my content. My web page mainly is just for MC bookings. It's just sort of about my work in that field as TV producer and MC. So yeah, if you want to hire an MC, definitely go to my website. Otherwise, yeah, I'd love to see you around my channel and chatting. And thank you for being there. I love hanging out with you in the live streams and chatting away there. It's always a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, it's been very educational, and I always tell people, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in crypto still. I mean,
that's such a lovely thing to hear.
Because you're it's not only the entertainment. I learn something every time I log into your channel, and that has that has more value to me than anything else, you know.
Ah,
So once
that's so
again,
lovely. And I'm so glad that you're producing more and more content now. I think that's awesome. The more people that we have educating people about why this is important, I think the much better society is going to be.
yeah, we got to get more people out there. People, don't be afraid. Get your laptops, get your mics, get your cameras. Let's get it on, okay?
Let's
So,
cover it all.
so yes, once again, thank you, Naomi. I'm going to put a link to your channel in this video, and I will talk to you on Twitter.
Yay! See
Bye.
ya.